Hi, everyone, and welcome to Frameline44. My name is James Woolley. I'm the Executive Director of Frameline. I do hope you've been enjoying this digital festival, and I do hope you've seen quite a few films. One of the highlights for sure is Monsoon, and I'm so happy to be chatting to the director and the star. If we can bring them both on screen.
Hello.
And if you both introduce yourselves, please.
I'm Hong Khaou, writer-director.
And I am Henry Golding. I play Kit in Monsoon.
Brilliant. Thank you both so much for joining us. And just before I start, Hong, you directed one of my all-time favorite films of recent years as well, not just Monsoon, but Lilting. I just thought it was stunning. I just wanted to fangirl for a moment, and you must be so proud of the reception and the legacy that film's left.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't. It's hard. I don't know what the legacy of that film is, but it's been nice. I think it's been a real journey. Yeah, and I think it's a good way to start my career.
Yeah. Thank you for letting me have that moment. I just love it so much. And let's dive right into Monsoon, which is just a beautiful film. Hong, could you tell us a little bit about the origins of this story and how you got started?
It's been kind of brewing in me for some time. I would say even before Lilting in some different incarnation. But I guess it's something that's very something that I'm very I struggle with constantly, this tug and pull between a sense of national identity and cultural identity, and it's something that I still continue to have. And I wanted to find a way to put it into a film, I guess. Yeah, I would say that's the origin.
Yeah, and I read a quote from you talking about how in some ways it does draw from your life, but in many ways it doesn't. You've made some very significant changes to the script about its location and so forth. Did you want to elaborate on, why you chose Vietnam?
Yeah, I think after Lilting, because his Lilting was so personal, I was trying to find a way to distance myself in Monsoon. And so I would say that you kind of can't get away from that. So it is from a personal experience, but I wouldn't say it's autobiographical. And I think a lot of the events are not necessarily my events either, but it's so I'm Cambodian, but I grew up in Vietnam. But my childhood memories are only of Vietnam because I was just a baby when I left Cambodia. And I did try in early drafts, I did try to tell it from a Cambodian perspective. And I felt maybe it wasn't interesting enough, maybe, because I'm not sure how. Whereas I think something like the Vietnam-American War was more, is very much in kind of, I would say, popular culture. And I grew up on a diet of that, which is, these American Vietnam War films that's been predominantly the dominant perspective in it. So I wanted maybe to find a way to do my take on it, I would say.
That's really interesting. And how did you find your superstar lead actor, Henry Golding? I'd love to hear about the casting process and all of that.
I have no idea how we found Henry Golding. we really, honestly, it was Amy Hubbard was our casting director. And we always knew with a script like Monsoon, he needed somebody that could kind of get all those nuances and all those all those sensitive permutations the story requires, and it needed, and Kit is in every frame of the film, right? It needed somebody that could carry that and that could also give us access to his internal journey. So we searched truly everywhere, and then a taping from Henry came in, and I think all of us were kind of quietly quite surprised, thinking, "Oh, there's something rather special about this person," and we had no idea who Henry is, and he truly because we were under no pressure to do any of that. We just needed an actor, a bloody good actor to get those nuances out. And then through the various different stages of casting, eventually I flew out to LA to meet Henry. And I think when you start working with somebody in person, that's when you really realize. And I felt, when Henry was accessing some of these emotions, it didn't feel cliche to me. Things that you typically see from maybe well-trained actors. It just came from it felt so honest that I wholeheartedly bought into that. So I think that's when it really sold it to me completely.
Yeah, and Henry, you do a great job. I'd love to hear from you about what attracted you to this script and, meeting Hong for the first time.
Yeah, for me, it was, we got hold of the script and I read it, and it was almost sort of instant in my love for it. It really resonated in terms of Kit's identity kind of, I suppose, quandary. Like he understands and knows that his family is from Vietnam, but he feels a rather lack of kind of connection with Vietnam because his parents really kind of try to stay away from allowing him to understand who they were and where they came from, and thus sort of lit the fuse of Kit actually wanting to go and finding out. I think he's gone through his own personal struggles, and that's something that I went through as a kid from two sort of ethnic backgrounds, British and Malaysian, growing up in Malaysia until I was like 8 years old, moving to the UK, and then being there until I was 21, and then finally going back to Malaysia on my own journey to try to understand kind of what my Malaysian side sort of entailed. And so, Kit goes with the premise of trying to find sort of a resting place for his parents' ashes, but I think secretly he yearns to find more about himself and allow himself to sort of feel sort of accepted in his own skin.
It's a beautiful answer. Yeah, and I'm so glad that you found this script and were in it. It was just a fantastic performance. And Hong's right, you are in every frame. It must be quite daunting.
Yeah, it was, it was phenomenal filming in Vietnam. I'd been to sort of Vietnam a couple of times, but not to this extent. I think we were there for about 3 months. And so it becomes a character. It's almost you barely need actors in a place like Vietnam, because you sort of proper camera on its stilts on pointing out to sort of a cross section of a street, and there's just so much life. And I think that's one thing that Hong did amazingly, was just bring Vietnam to the big screen with all of its color, its sound, its smells that you could sort of just imagine sort of coming out of the screen. So for me, it was I had just actually filmed Crazy Rich Asians and Simple Favor, but none of those had sort of been released at that point. And so I was at a very, very early stage of my career where I just yearned to do and test myself a lot more, and I thought something so muted and so subtle as how Hong sort of portrayed Kit in the script. It was like the pot of gold that I wanted. It was so tasty in a sense. And so when Hong came out to LA, we just hit it off. We sat in a cafe, we spoke to each other about our experiences, and I think we both were on the same wavelength of trying to do the character and the project justice, really.
Yeah, that's amazing. And Hong, I'd just like to quickly ask about finding some of the other actors in the script as well, including Parker, who's the love interest. How did you go about finding those actors?
It just through the process of casting. Sorry, I don't have anything.
Really interesting.
Amazing, but it was. I mean,
it came to him in a dream.
Yeah.
I need Parker Sawyers.
I drew a picture of this man, and I think once we found Henry, we needed to make sure everything had to be built around, Kit, and Parker was somebody we had seen before, but we just weren't until we knew who Kit was, and then we could see how they are together. Could we then be sure? So it was just, and it just felt when you can see on the screen that when the two of them have a lovely chemistry, and it's rather kind of fun to watch.
Yeah, it definitely was. Well, then let's turn a little bit more to shooting in Vietnam then. I'd love to know a little bit more about what that was like, and some highlights from the shoot. Henry, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, God, where do we start? It was like the never-ending shoot. I mean, I think all shoots feel like the never-ending shoot. But when you're in it, when you're halfway through a project, you feel almost like pirates. Like that's how I love to sort of feel is, at the beginning it's kind of struggle sort of finding your rhythm, but then when you're in it because every location you're there for, maybe the afternoon or perhaps the day. But then you move on and you have this traveling circus with you. And so you have to move like 30 or 40 people to the next location. And so you're always on the move. And I think it was the biggest challenge was the noise, the sheer sort of noise that comes off the streets of Vietnam. It's seriously a never-ending crescendo of horning, of motorbikes, of people having dinner on the streets, of socializing. It's such a phenomenal atmosphere over there, and I think we all like really appreciated it. I mean, I just distinctly remember, I don't know, it was like a backpacking district that we were filming, and it was, and I think it wasn't a big standout scene as such, but it was raining. All the camera crew were on the side of the street. There was like just so much noise happening, but then you get the job done, and then at the end you just have a beer on the street. It's like it was such a fun memory. But I'd go back again, do it all over again. It was, and also, I mean, I think there's one scene for me which I had a little freak out, and that was the do you remember the bridge scene, Hong? On the motorbike.
Yeah.
So we have that beautiful scene where we go over like Rainbow Bridge, but like on a motorbike, and I'm used to motorbikes usually, but like on a motorbike with big old trucks coming past, and like, one of our guys like riding, but it was such a stunning moment in the movie. I think all were. What about you, Hong? What was your favorite?
Oh God, I mean, it was. I think Henry's right. It's like the Wild West, isn't it? It's the noise, incessant. It's just pulverizing. It just kind of attacks your senses all the time. So on the one hand, it's amazing. The country welcomed us, and the crew worked extremely hard, and I think it gave the film this rich texture, and I would say made our film look much more expensive than it actually was. But I think, and that's partly because we really threw, we threw our actors into the element, and because we just didn't have the budget to close streets down, and that was horrible. That scene when we put Henry on the motorbike, and suddenly I think this truck drove past, and we were like, and Tracy was like, oh. Like truly, like all of us were just kind of heart skipped a beat for a minute. And Vietnam, I think sometimes we knew when we went to a country like Vietnam, even though it's an incredible, thriving, ambitious country, I think our industry, in the film industry in the West, I would say was something maybe like 10 years or more ahead of them. And I think we were very conscious when we go to a country like that was to not impose our sense of what is right and what is wrong. And I think sometimes we got sucked down too far, and you kind of fall into this slipstream, and you don't quite, and you have these moments where it was quite dangerous. And God, Henry's.
We made it out alive.
You did. And
it's amazing, but it's a beautiful scene, and it's such a
yeah. That's what I mean. It was so worth it. It's so atmospheric.
And you captured the two different cities of Hanoi and Saigon quite beautifully as well. I loved in Hanoi the scene by the lake with all the older men just sitting there in their matching white shirts, and that's exactly what it's like by that lake. And I think that was really great. Tell me about deciding to, travel and shoot in both different cities, and if there was any difference.
I mean, it was always going to be the South and North, and I wanted to visit locations that were very specific to the conflict between Vietnam and America, and I wanted to. I'm not sure. Not everybody will fully be aware of this, but we went to locations that were very significant, during the conflict, I didn't want to go to too many locations. I just wanted to do the South and the North because of the divide between the South and the North. And the North has more. I don't know how to describe it. I think the North of Vietnam is far more. It has the remnants of the past and the kind of romance of the past, whereas a city like Saigon is more a concrete metropolis, and I guess I wanted to kind of show that contrast as well, where the North, there's still certain elements of tradition that's still very much alive, such as the tea scenting, whereas the South is just young, ambitious, and thriving.
Yeah, it's great. In the film, it's quite matter of fact that the character is, gay, and it's quite beautifully done and so forth. Did you tell us a little bit about that, how you decided to keep it very simple, and, he didn't really need to come out to people and it wasn't much discussed? I quite liked that. Tell me about those decisions.
Yeah, that was always intentional. I didn't want it to be a film about sexual identity. I wanted them to be absolutely confident in their sexual identity, and what the front of the film was always about that struggle between, and Lewis has that. I would say Lewis is a couple of years ahead of Kit, and that they both have very similar journeys. That this struggle for a sense of how to reconcile themselves with the traumas of their parents' past, and how that keeps colliding forward to affect their relationship. It's a very simple. I guess it's a very simple idea, but I felt, to me, I also wanted to be quite a powerful thing. Hence, I wanted that scene at the end in the nightclub, for that kiss to be very celebratory, because I really like the idea that you have these two gay men who are not, who don't carry the stigma of their sexuality, and what the front of the story is a struggle for a sense of identity more than sexual identity, and in doing that, I think it's a celebration of their sexual identity.
Yeah, I thought it was very beautifully done. Very beautifully done. I guess I wanted to return to that theme of identity, which we spoke a little bit about at the beginning. Do you want to just touch on a little bit more about that returning to home kind of feeling, and how did the character end up at the end, and what did it mean? What did the ending mean?
I think from my perspective, for Kit, you see an almost complete journey within the film for himself. he sort of arrives in Vietnam, and he is in a sense of kind of confusion and kind of a cloud and fog of sort of not understanding of like what this place really is. Like he is overwhelmed with the noise, with the traffic, with the people, with the language that he thought he remembered, but actually his memory of speaking that as a young child has sort of waned. So he's a lot worse off than he thought he would be, I think. And then you see his progression. It's something so simple as sort of crossing a street. There's a magical sort of way of crossing the streets in Vietnam that once you get it, you get it. You don't even have to think about it anymore. But it's really like working with the flow of traffic. But as a newcomer, you just don't understand that people will move around you rather than you having to kind of move around them. And so crossing a street, really, the less you look, the better off you are. And you kind of see that in Kit. And I think that's like almost like a representation of him becoming at peace with not only himself, but with his understanding of Vietnam and why he's there and why it means so much to him. And so by the end, I think it comes out in also his relationship with Lewis, that in the beginning it was almost it was like a sexual tension, and it was ferocious in a way, but then later on in the movie it becomes tender, and I think he opens himself up to be loved, and then by the end they have that magical scene that Hong loved so much, which is them in the nightclub in public, and not having to sort of worry about the baggage of maybe their fathers or their mothers, and they just exist in this sort of in this beautiful moment, and they're two strangers in an equally as strange country who have found each other, and I love that journey.
That's great, thank you. The film's had a reasonably successful festival run, which is great for 2020. I'd love to hear about what the reaction of the audience has been, and I know the film's been picked up for UK and US distribution. If you could tell us about, how excited you are for it being shown wide across those countries. Hong, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, it's amazing that we, like you said, in this day and age, with everything that's happened, that the companies are able to give a distribution. I think Australia just released it as well. Mm-hmm. They did it a month ago. It's just I mean, I'm just I'm very touched that they decided to do that, considering how difficult it is and just the uncertainty of all of that, right? Sorry. I'm not sure if I answered your question. I forgot your question.
It's all good. Just maybe from any great reactions from the viewers. Has anyone come up to you and said how much it meant to them?
Well, not the only festival I've been to was Karlovy Vary, and that was really, we had some amazing Q&As and audience reaction, and we showed it in this incredible cinema. I think it was like 1,000 people or something like that. That was really, really moving, just seeing them and seeing them talking to you afterwards, and the Q&A, the kind of questions they were asking, and just understanding some of the stuff that I was trying to do. That was really nice. But other than that, I haven't. Oh, and London Film Festival was that was
the big one.
I think over here in LA we had was it Outfest?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
What we had, and I got a few messages on Twitter saying how beautiful the film was, and how I think it definitely resonates with a lot of the Asian American community, because of that sense of identity of I love how eloquently you put it, Hong, and I think you're going to have to help me out here, but in sense of cultural, how do you define yourself? Not of kind of, is it, I forgot the word that you say. What's the struggle that Kit's going through?
the tug and pull, the sense of cultural and national identity.
That one. I need to write that down.
I think it's very true. I think there's a generation of adults who come from this diaspora background where when you're fleeing a war-torn country, and there's a generation of people like kind of me where we're now adults and then we're grappling for a sense of who we are, you know, and it's a very hard thing when you have no access to that. I'm not. Some people do and some people don't, and I think it's a slow understanding that sometimes when your parents are fleeing something so traumatic, everything they build in the West is contingent on forgetting some of these past traumas. And I think in doing that, it is their way of allowing their children to be whoever they want to be, to liberate them, to be Westernized. And it was my way of offering the flip side to that coin, you know, because often I think there's a very romantic, which isn't the wrong idea, there's this very romantic notion that we need to go back to our past and understand that in order to kind of be content with the present. And I think for somebody like Kit and myself even, and a generation of other adults, I don't think we have those things to grapple onto.
That's great. Well, our time is up, so I just wanted to say a big thank you to both Hong and Henry. It's a beautiful film, and we're so proud to be playing it. So thank you so much for this great Q&A as well. It was a lovely chat.
Thanks, James.
Thank you.
Thank you.